Have you ever wondered if there's such thing as a Google, but for your soul? Surprise, surprise, there is, and it's called the Akashic Records. You can think of the Akashic Records like an energetic library that holds all of the memories, insights, wisdom from your current life, past lives, and even possibly future lives. Now, you might think that that sounds somewhat mysterious or even esoteric, but what I love about the Akashic Records is that it really can be a practical tool, and certainly in the way that I use it. And the Akashic Records gives us an opportunity, a place, even a tool to get answers to questions that we've always wondered about. These can be questions about our career, about our finances, about our life purpose, about relationships, about directions, steps we're headed in. I love to use the Akashic Records for questions about my business and about growing my business. I have lots of resources on using the Akashic Records for business. So if you too have a business, this is what I consider one of my secret weapons in business. One thing that I think is really amazing and special is that almost certainly you have already accessed the Akashic Records for yourself. There are so many intuitive and self-reflection practices that naturally allow us to access this space. Cosmic intelligence, infinite field, Akashic Records, however you want to define it and name it. If you have ever spent time meditating, for example, especially if you have done any visualization work or tried to access higher states of consciousness, if you do regular journaling work, especially if you do any automatic writing, that's a common way that we access the Akashic field. If you ever have strong, very clear dreams, that's another way that we can access the Akashic field, perhaps in nature, perhaps through other spiritual practices. So don't feel like this Akashic Record experience is limited only to the times where we are consciously going into the records, because there are so many ways that we access this infinite field on our own, perhaps without even being conscious or even aware of it. And a question that I get asked all the time is, are Akashic readings the same as psychic or mediumship readings? So they have a couple things in common. Obviously, all of these readings, all of these practices are very highly intuitive. They're also highly dependent on the practitioner's ability to read, discern, and interpret intuitive information. So that is obviously based on how they receive intuitive information and then how they can actually explain that to their clients. Psychic readings are a little bit different because the practitioner is reading the person's or the client's personal energy field. So psychic information tends to, for the most part, focus on short-term future and the present. And mediumship readings obviously focus on connecting with and communicating with lost loved ones. Akashic readings, on the other hand, are thought to exist in the 7th, 8th, or possibly even the 9th dimension. So they really have a bird's eye view, very much a broad, sometimes very specific, but a broad overview. It really comes from a soul level, which means that the wisdom can really resonate and really, this idea of a frequency, the information really resonates and rings true, and you can feel it in your body. So, of course, since we can ask a question about anything that we have been wondering about, the accuracy of the information is really important. And I always make it clear to people that your Akashic reading starts from the moment that you actually sit down, you might self-reflect, maybe you'll even meditate on the questions that you'll ask. And the most important kind of framework that we use for asking questions is the usual, like how, what, where, why. They're not questions that have a yes or no answer, because at a practitioner level, I could offer you a yes or a no, but it doesn't move you forward in any way. It doesn't really provide guidance or insights or even more detail about what you may have been struggling with. So best questions are the ones that really allow us to provide more detail and insight into a particular scenario. Because your Akashic reading for me begins the moment that you sit down and start thinking about your questions. I think it's really important to treat it as a sacred, divine experience. I always recommend that people don't wait till the last minute to prepare your questions, because chances are, if you start preparing your questions, 2 days, 3 days before your reading, you will see symbols, you will see signs, you'll see information that's coming to you, because your guides, your spirit team really wants to help you on this process. So if you're aware and you're consciously kind of on the lookout for answers that you might get prior to your reading, it adds depth and it adds clarity. And then of course it adds extra guidance. You may wonder why someone might have an Akashic reading besides all the reasons that we've already talked about. And I think a lot of people come to the Akashic Records as a way to really deeply tune into themselves and to their spirit. Many people come to the Akashic Records, me included, for healing, whether or not that's emotional healing, mental healing, physical healing, even spiritual healing. I have even done psychic surgeries in the Akashic Records. And so as a person who's very practical, very grounded, I can only share what I'm getting. And I have seen some incredible healings that have happened as a result of being in the space and being in the frequency of the Akashic Records themselves. So a lot of people come to the Akashic Records as a way to heal emotional and energetic blocks, things that have been standing in their way, keeping them from moving forward. And a lot of people also come to the Akashic Records to find out more information about their own personal talents and gifts. And in the same vein, what is their life purpose? And I like to think of life purpose even from the perspective of leaving a legacy. And that's something that I have talked about and will continue to talk about on my website as a way to really shift and change people's perspective of what it means to have a legacy from the perspective of the Akashic Records. And so finally, I think the most important reason that anybody would access the Akashic Records or come for an Akashic reading is to have actionable, specific, targeted guidance. So we always want someone who has a higher perspective, who can lend a fresh perspective on what we're going through. And at a soul level, that's something that you really cannot measure or even quantify, the amount of relief that you can feel from an incredible, professional, sacred Akashic reading. If you're looking for guidance, for support, for revelation, answers to your deepest, darkest questions, I highly recommend the Akashic Records, getting a reading, or even better, a series of readings to help move you forward on your personal and spiritual journey. Wishing you the best. Be well.